In this video, I'm going to be designing an end table. Now, I call this an exercise, but really it's more of a design project. I wrote exercise 5 in the title block, but maybe instead we should write design project 1. Unlike in previous lessons where we are given an isometric shape and attempt to draw it orthographically in the top view, front view, side view, top view, now we're going to be coming up with our own designs and trying to draw them orthographically. And to do that, we want to consider scale. Now, here I have a scale of 1/8 of an inch. And the reason I choose 1/8 of an inch is because this is 1/8 inch graph paper. The larger cells here are 1 inch by 1 inch, and they're filled with smaller cells, which are 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch. And so there's 8 across and 8 up and down. So with a 1/8 scale, every inch would equal 8 inches. So every 1/8 of an inch would equal 1 inch. And that works nicely with this graph paper. So I'm going to be doing a lot of designing in this drawing, which means I may draw something, not like it, and change it. Again, we're not working from a set plan or a set isometric shape that we're trying to draw exactly. We're working from our imaginations, and we're going to have to figure out the best way to balance form and function. We need to make an end table that works well as an end table, but also that has an appealing aesthetic that looks like something someone would want to put in their living room. So to do that, I'm going to end up doing a lot of drawing, erasing, redrawing. And with that in mind, we need to make sure that we're making very light construction lines so that we have a lot of leeway in terms of changing our design without distracting from the final drawing with a bunch of eraser marks. I'm going to be drawing a little heavier than normal with my construction lines because I want them to be picked up on camera. And I'm going to be spending a lot of time in this video just thinking through what I'm doing and how I lay it out. And let's talk about layout. In most of our exercises, we've started in the bottom left quadrant. And I'm still going to use the quadrant setup here just as a simplified way to lay out my drawing. But you'll see I'm starting in the top left quadrant instead of the bottom left quadrant. And that's intentional. Normally, when we're drawing an object, the most interesting views are the front view, the side view, and the top view. But when you think about a table from a design perspective, there's not much useful or interesting information that we need to depict with a top view of a table. Mostly it's either going to be a square or a rectangle or an oval or whatever shape you choose your tabletop to be, but it's not exceedingly useful information. So I'm going to opt for a bottom view instead. And to do that, we're just going to start in the top left quadrant, and we can reflect over a 45 the same way we did with the other drawings, but the 45 is going to go in the bottom right quadrant, and you'll see how I do that. But it works pretty much exactly the same. Back to what I'm doing here in the drawing. I'm going to start this drawing the same way we started all of our drawings, by just laying out some standard, boxing in some dimensions for how wide or how tall I want the end table to be. And you do want to make sure you look up standard dimensions for any kind of furniture design project you're doing. If you're trying to make an end table, it needs to be at a certain height and certain width to fit most living rooms, to fit most couches and other furniture, and to function, in a way that's useful. You wouldn't want to design a coffee table and make it too tall, like a dining room table. You wouldn't want to design a desk, like a computer desk, and make the desks so too short that you couldn't scoot in a standard office chair to fit underneath it. Of course, there's variation in design um, between different size and shapes of end tables, and that's good. People want to be able to pick, you know, something that fits their room or their style. But we always want to balance form and function. So picking a style that is functional and also matches our aesthetic choices. So when looking at standard dimensions, the height is the most critical dimension, and that tends to be somewhere between 20 and 25 inches. Getting this dimension too far out of whack would make a non-functional end table. The width and depth of an end table tends to vary. Generally, it's somewhere between 15 to 30 inches. Anything longer than that or wider than that, it's taking up too much space. But again, there's a lot of variation in width and depth. So with mine, I chose to go with 25 inches tall and 18 inches wide at the widest point. So I'm just going to block in some simple end table shapes. So I'm going to go with some straight legs here, about 2 inches wide. Again, thinking about structurally what'll be sturdy enough to hold an end table of this size and give me a bit of an overhang on the tabletop of about an inch. Again, look at some designs that are out there. Think about materials. Obviously, if you're making legs out of steel, you don't need to have as thick of legs. You can use, in fact, if you make them too thick, they'd be rather heavy, right? Um, if you're going to use wood, you maybe want to use a little thicker legs because wood tends to break a bit easier than steel. Um, with a tabletop, same thing. If you're going to go with like a marble or stone tabletop, you maybe want to make it, a bit thinner so it's not overly heavy. Uh, and if you're going with a wood tabletop, you can make it a bit thicker if you like. Not all end tables have overhangs. Some of them don't have, that overhang lip. Some of them are flush to the sides. Think about if you're making more of a modern looking end table or more of a Victorian looking style. Um, when you consider where you're placing a drawer, if you even choose to put a drawer, you want to make sure that it's going to be in a place that makes sense with the construction of the end table. That drawer needs to be able to slide in and slide out without hitting the thickness of the legs. That, do the legs run all the way up to the tabletop, or do they stop at where the drawer is? What would be easiest to construct? What would make the most sense? These are things you're going to be considering when building your end table, and hopefully you think about those things when you're making your design. And that's what makes a good design a good design. When you see an object that was designed to be the epitome of form or function, it strikes us as generally a good design. When you think of a fighter jet, the only purpose of a fighter jet is to function at peak performance, but it also looks incredibly cool and appealing. Part of our brain recognizes that is the epitome of good form. So, or good function in that case. So think about how you're going to construct your end tables. In fact, it's good sometimes to almost imagine what it would be like to break this apart, what kind of pieces you would need to construct it if you were, if it were to come in a box kit, or if you were building it from individual boards, how those boards would fit together. We need to be able to break this down and reassemble it in our minds. Now, your capacity to do that is going to determine your success with this drawing. You don't need to be a master carpenter or cabinet maker to draw and design a good end table. but it certainly does help. Now, you may find that you may want to make a few sketches on scrap paper to help keep track of some ideas in your mind. That's a good idea. You may also find that a bit of research, uh, looking at different designs, looking at how a drawer works and operates would be useful to do. I encourage you to do that. I'm not going to require anyone to do that. That is going to be up to you to know what you need to do to execute your ideas. So you'll see me refining my design further. I decided to go with a drawer that has a faceplate on it, which means I want to show that the drawer cavity exists here with a hidden line, but that there's a drawer that has a bit of a lip over the top of it, that does not sit flushly in the drawer cavity. So I'm going to make a 1/2 inch lip and show the drawer cavity with a hidden line. Some of these details start to get a little cramped. It's really important, again, to make sure you're keeping your line quality good and easily readable. Again, I'm still working with what are light construction lines for the most part. I will later go in and really set those lines in stone with dark visible lines. Again, remember back to our alphabet of lines lessons, reference your line sheets to make sure you're using the correct lines to show the correct information. Continue to refine your design, again, thinking about form and function, and also your ability to depict that detail. Now, I'm deciding to widen this drawer. I think that a wider drawer adds more functionality to the end table, more room for space. I think it also looks better. This is a big empty space. Why have a little drawer in there? Let's fill that space with a drawer. However, it adds more complexity to my design. Now my drawer is cutting into my table legs. So I'm going to have to depict that with my drawing, that I'm cutting into my table legs. These are all things to consider when you're choosing your design. How complicated do you really want to make your drawing? How complicated do you want to make your design? There's such thing as overly complicated. So keep that in mind. Now I'm looking down here at my table legs and I think, the straight, simple legs are nice, but we could put a bit of a diagonal angle on the interior of these legs to make them a little wider at the top and a little narrower at the bottom, and that would give it, I think, a nice look. And so that's what I'll do. But again, it does make your drawing a little more complex. We learned about making these unknown angles in a previous lesson. If you want to go back and revisit that. It's there, but we should all know how to draw an unknown angle, and that's what we're including in our table legs. So at this point, I'm pretty satisfied with my design. My lines are a little messy, so I'm going to want to make sure I go back in and clarify everything before I finish. But this is a pretty satisfying design. For now, I'm going to move on to the side view. I might be holding off on really blocking in with with more permanent visible lines, just because sometimes when you're designing the side view or even the bottom view, you're going to run into things that make you rethink the way you drew something in another view, uh, and you may continually refine your drawing up until the end. So it may be a good idea to hold off on really laying a heavy visible line in until you get your two other views fully completed. However, it's important to kind of have your drawing cleaned up enough that you can see what's going on too. So, all right, and just like in our other drawings, we're just going to project the important measurement information over to the side view. So I'm going to get the tabletop here, and I projected that information over. I also projected over the the body of the table and the height of the legs. And now I'm deciding how wide or how deep, I guess, I want my table to be. And I decided to go with the same depth as the width, but you may decide that you want your table to be much deeper than it is wide. I'm going to put another angle in the leg. This is not the same. This is not the same uh, side of the table. So these legs cut in from both sides. Now you could have done straight. You could do angle legs from one side and straight legs from another side. That would be fine. In my drawing or my design, it's going to uh, angle in both from the side and from the front view. Okay, I'm going to block in this with a bit of a heavier line here, and this looks to be a pretty well blocked in basic form. I want to probably now go ahead and include the drawer information. Again, drawers make your drawing more complicated. So, I mean, really consider whether or not you want to take on the extra challenge of designing a table with a drawer. And even among drawers, there are different levels of complexity. I chose to put a faceplate on my drawer, and that adds another layer of complexity. A flush fitting drawer is a lot easier and more simple to draw. So consider your design, consider your level of detail and how complex you want to make your drawing, and find that balance for yourself. And with the side view mostly completed, I'm now going to begin working on my bottom view. And to do that, I'm going to make another 45-degree reflection line and start projecting over the important information from both views. So I'm going to work in this view in a sort of back to front order, or from the top of the table to the bottom of the table. Start getting some dimensions for the table legs and where they meet the body first before I worry about the smaller dimension at the bottom. Again, this is where all that complex information really tends to compound itself when you're combining both of these views. You'll notice the bottom view tends to get pretty complicated, and I actually go in and do a bit of refining to my design here in this view. So it is pretty cool, though, the way the drawing just sort of magically comes together in the last view. I'm drawing in some rails for my drawer to slide along on the bottom of my table here. So I'm going to draw in the drawer cavity with this hidden line. It's important to mention that priority of line matters. So anywhere where a visible line would overlap a hidden line, that visible line would of course take precedence over the hidden line. Again, any detail that you would see from this view you're going to want to include. Sometimes you may draw something and then realize that it's covered by something else. You need to erase it. Or if it's really vital information, such as the drawer cavity here or the cutaway on the table legs, you may choose to show that with a hidden line. Making my way to the bottom of the drawing, I'll draw the bottom of my feet, or the table legs. And then there's that unknown angle to deal with, which is a diagonal from corner to corner. Once you've finished refining your drawing and you're happy with its look, you can go ahead and erase those construction lines and go back over all the visible lines with a heavy dark line. That'll complete your drawing. See you in the next one.